confirming where the sun sets every evening. Here it is, narrated from Abu Dawud. I was sitting behind the Messenger of Allah who was riding a donkey while the sun was setting. He asked, "Do you know where this sets?" I replied, "Allah and His Apostle know best." He said, "It sets in a spring of warm water." Now, we can see it's ridiculous to keep insisting the Quran didn't mean it actually set in a muddy spring. We have a hadith direct from Muhammad where he tells us that the sun sets in a muddy spring. Now, a Muslim might say not all hadiths are true, and they would be correct. So let's quickly recap what the main classification of hadith authenticity is. The very best hadith you can get is Sahih, which is considered by mainstream Muslims as 100% fully authentic. Next we have Sahih Hasan, which is basically accurate. Next we have Hasan, which means good. Next we have Da'if, which means a hadith is weak. Finally we have Mawdu', which means fabricated. This hadith by Muhammad about the sun setting in a muddy spring is classified, yes, you guessed it, Sahih. So the top classification. There are other hadiths regarding what happens to the sun, including one which tells
the Messenger of Allah while he was on a donkey, and the sun was setting. He said, "Do you know where this sun sets?" I said, "Allah and His Messenger know best." He said, "It sets in a spring of warm water." Since Muhammad says nothing about Dhul Qarnayn here, Muslims can't assert that Muhammad was merely describing some sort of optical illusion that Dhul Qarnayn saw. This is Muhammad telling one of his companions where the sun goes when it sets. And according to Muhammad, the sun sets in a spring of water. Hence, Muslims who try to reinterpret Surah 18 verse 86 of the Quran are telling us that Allah was confused about what Dhul Qarnayn saw, that the Quran is horribly unclear, and that modern Muslims understand the Quran better than Muhammad did.
Assalamu alaikum and hello to my non-Muslim viewers. Today I'm going to be refuting this hadith in Sunan Abu Dawud 4002, saying that the Prophet Muhammad said that the sun sets in a spring of warm water. And the critics say that the Prophet Muhammad in the Quran made a scientific error regarding where the sun sets, because we know that the sun doesn't physically set anywhere on earth. But anyways, I'm just going to be refuting this hadith. I'm not going to be talking about the Quran, chapter 18, verse 86, because I already talked about that before. I already talked about that earlier this year, and I recently made a video about the Quran, chapter 18, verse 86, so I'm just going to be focusing on this hadith. I'm not going to be talking about the Quran in this video. So anyways, David Wood, the same David Wood who tried to kill his father with a hammer and was thrown into a mental hospital by his mother, and the atheist YouTuber, the Master Arab, say that the Prophet Muhammad made a mistake here. He made some kind of he said something that's scientifically absurd, where that the sun sets in a spring of warm water, which of course is not true scientifically. So their argument is that the Prophet Muhammad, you know, he was just making things up, or he didn't know how the sun and the earth work, and you know, the Prophet Muhammad wasn't a man of science, you know, and he didn't know basic things about the universe and how, you know, the solar or how the planetary bodies work and stuff like that. So first of all, we got to see if this hadith is authentic. Now the critics will say that this hadith is sahih, but what they don't understand, or what they're not saying, is that they're actually mistaken here, because just because something is sahih in isnad, that doesn't mean the content in that hadith is authentic. Ibn Salah writes, the sound hadith can be neither sada nor defective. The sahih sound hadith is supported hadith. You know, so basically, being merely a sahih isnad is not enough for the report itself to be, or the content to be, authentic. And when I looked into the hadith in Abu Dawud, first of all, Abu Dawud warns people or he tells his readers that you know, his hadith books do have weak hadith in there. So what happened with this hadith is that basically this hadith was accidentally classified as sahih. So what that means is that what that means is that that basically this hadith accidentally got classified as authentic when in reality it isn't authentic. If we read Sunan Abu Dawud, the collection translated by Yasser Qadi in the U.S. If we read volume 1 of that book, basically, any hadith after Sahih or Abu Dawud book 30, any hadith past hadith number 3990, any hadith past that is considered inauthentic, according to Sunan Abu Dawud. So basically, this hadith and this hadith about the Prophet Muhammad saying the sun sets in warm water, and Abu Dawud 4002 is a shaz, or it's a isolated hadith. And isolated hadith cannot be isolated hadith are rejected; they're not accepted. So basically, when we see that, when we analyze the chain of narrators, it says that there's 6 different narrators, and only through Ibrahim ibn Iyaz al-Daimi that the words "it sets in a spring water," "it sets in a spring of warm water" are narrated. In short, this saying that it sets in a spring of warm water was added later on. It's not part of the original report. This fact alone is enough to make the narration dubious. But anyways, if we read what the classical Muslim scholars have to say about this narration, Hafiz al-Bazar says that we do not know anyone other than Sufyan bin Hussein reporting it. So basically and this is found in Musnad al-Bazar, hadith number 4010. So basically what Hafiz al-Bazar is saying is that there's only one narrator of this hadith through one specific chain of transmission. So when we look at the chain of transmitters, or we look at the chain of transmission, or the people in the isnad, or chain of transmission, Muhammad ibn Sa'd said that the narrator was reliable, but he made many mistakes in his narrations, and this is found in Tabaqat al-Kabar, volume 7, page 227, number 3417. So basically, the person who narrated this, narrated "it sets in a spring of warm water" was somebody named Ibrahim ibn Yaz al-Daimi. So basically, he added those words in there. The Prophet Muhammad didn't say that. So this makes the narration inauthentic. But anyways, you don't even have to look at like isnads or chain of transmission or the sciences of hadith to refute this hadith, because this hadith is not found in any tafsir literature. If you read Tafsir ibn Kathir, this hadith is not found in there, and the reason why that's important is because if you read the introduction to Ibn Kathir, or if you read the back of Tafsir ibn Kathir, he says that Ibn Kathir used hadith to explain each verse and chapter of the Quran. So if this hadith was authentic, how come Ibn Kathir didn't put it in his commentary? It would have made a lot of sense for him to put in his commentary if it was authentic. Sahih Bukhari never mentions this hadith. And Bukhari is a more authentic collection than Abu Dawud. So basically, this hadith is false, because there's a lot of evidence that the isnad, or the chain of transmission for this hadith is not authentic, because some person named Ibrahim ibn Yaz al-Daimi pretty much added the words "it's set in a spring of warm water" in there. And again, 6 different narrators narrated this hadith, and only one person added his own words into that hadith. So if you read what Hafiz al-Bazar says and Ibn Sa'd say, they say that the narrator or the narrator made a lot of mistakes in his narrations, and just because hadith is sahih in isnad, that doesn't mean that the content of that hadith is authentic, according to Hafiz ibn Salah in Introduction to Science of Hadith, page 5. So basically, in conclusion, this hadith is weak. This hadith is weak, and it was accidentally classified as Sahih by Abu Dawud. But regardless, Abu Dawud basically has a lot of weak hadith in his collections. And if you read Sunan Abu Dawud, if you just read volume 1, if you read volume 1, he talks about how he collected his hadith and the methodology he would use and things like that. So even he admits that he has weak hadith in his book. This is found in Abu Dawud, volume 1, page 23 and 24, where he talks about his criteria and his objectives, and that he did put weak hadith into his narrations. So basically, Abu Dawud contains weak hadith. So this hadith was basically accidentally classified as a sahih. So in conclusion, this hadith is false. That the sun sets in that the Prophet Muhammad said that the sun sets in a spring of warm water. It's a false hadith. So if you want the authentic hadith, if you want to know what the authentic hadith about this is, see Sahih Bukhari. And if you want to know how the Muslim scholars have understood this, understood the Quran chapter 18 verse 86, read Tafsir ibn Kathir on that. But so this hadith is false because it's not mentioned in Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. It's not mentioned in Tafsir ibn Kathir, and it's found in Abu Dawud. Abu Dawud is considered a weaker source than the two authentic sources, which is Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. So it's a weak hadith that accidentally got classified as a Sahih because somebody named Ibrahim basically put his own words into that hadith. So that makes the whole hadith inauthentic according to the sciences of the hadith and according to Muslim scholars. So anyways, this hadith is not reliable. Critics of Islam should stop using it. Thanks, Tom.